Steve, thank you. Lord our God, you have entrusted us with many gifts and have called us to use them wisely for the building up of your holy church. As we gather this evening for this Orthodox Parish Leadership webinar, grant us wisdom and discernment so that all we undertake may strengthen our parishes and advance their sacred mission. Bless our presenters, Nick and Melpomene, and grant them clarity as they share their knowledge and experience with us. Bless all those participating from throughout our metropolises and guide our clergy and lay leaders as they seek to provide faithfully for the present needs of their communities while preparing wisely for the future. Teach us to approach the resources entrusted to our care with gratitude, responsibility, and generosity, remembering always that our ultimate purpose is to serve you and your people. For you are the source of every good and perfect gift, and to you we offer up glory, to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and always, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. Thank you, Steve, for allowing me the possibility to be with you again and to make some remarks regarding our work for today. Welcoming again the presentation of the 2026 Orthodox Parish Leadership, the webinar series, and I am especially grateful that we are joined this evening by participants from the metropolis of Atlanta and Boston. I also extend my sincere appreciation to our presenters, Nick Chekos and Melpomene Murdakis, for sharing their experience and expertise with us on the important topic beyond stewardship, fundraising for special parish initiatives and capital campaigns. Every parish, regardless of the size or the circumstances, will encounter moments when its regular operating resources are simply not sufficient to address an important need. The church may require significant repairs or renovation. The community may be ready to build or expand its facilities, undertake an iconography project, or invest in another initiative that will strengthen its ministries. These opportunities require more than simply asking people to give. They require careful planning, responsible leadership, a compelling vision, and the confidence of the faithful that the project will serve the church for years to come. It is also important that we recognize the distinction between these efforts and our annual stewardship. Stewardship is our faithful response to God's blessings and sustains the ongoing ministries and daily life of our parishes. Special fundraising should complement the commitment rather than diminish it. When approached thoughtfully, a special initiative can invite people to participate in something transformative while strengthening a broader parish culture, generosity within the parish. It is something that is happening in more than one way to our ministries and to our communities throughout our Holy Archdiocese. Hope and pray that our discussion today will give us a little bit more to take home with us as we deal with this very important subject. The discussion tonight will address plan giving, one of the greatest responsibilities of parish leadership is to think beyond our immediate needs. The decisions we make today should help ensure that our parishes remain spiritually vibrant and financially strong for the generations that will follow us. I encourage you to listen carefully, ask questions, and consider how the principles presented this evening might apply within your own parish. Not every community will undertake a capital campaign, but every parish can benefit from thoughtful preparation, responsible financial leadership, and a vision firmly focused upon the future. I thank you for participating and for continuing commitment to strengthen the parishes entrusted to our care. Now I look forward to the presentation by Nick and Melpomene. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Ispola et despota. Thank you, as you always do join us. I'm very excited tonight because we have two wonderful speakers, as we often do. We always do, actually. Tonight's speakers bring an absolute wealth of professional experience, but they've also, throughout their lives, have brought that experience to every level of our faith, at the parish level, at the metropolis level, at the archdiocesan level, and well beyond. So, Nick, if you can bring up the slide with Melpo's and your beautiful photos, and I'll do just a quick intro. Those many here will know Nick and Melpo. Melpo is the director of planned giving within the archdiocese. We're also blessed to have her join the Orthodox Parish leadership team here at the metropolis of San Francisco. And I know many have heard from Melpo, whether it's at clergy lady congresses or within your own metropolis and at various parishes. And Melpo, as I said, brings a wealth of professional experience as an executive coach, as a professional fundraiser throughout her career, and is from Minneapolis, in the beautiful St. Mary's in Minneapolis. And Nick, from the metropolis of Pittsburgh, Nick is the executive director of the Orthodox Ministry Services, or OMS. He has held positions with Focus North America, with IOCC. He's been an adjunct professor at the University of Pittsburgh. And Nick, with many others, those of us here on the committee that are putting on these webinars across the metropolises of Atlanta and Boston and San Francisco, joins us for that and the planning here throughout the year. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nick and to start the presentation tonight. Again, please be ready. We'll have just a couple questions to ask you to get really feedback and understand. We'll use the chat for that. Also, feel free to use the chat for any questions or comments you have. And we'll take particular breaks to respond to questions. We want to make this as interactive as possible so that you're all taking the resources and learnings back to your respective parishes. So, Nick, if you can take us into the start of the presentation.
Super. Thank you, Steve. Your Eminence, good to see you, and bless Master. We would like to, Melpo and I would like to start with a question. It's so wonderful to see so many people here this evening from all around the country. Just so we can get a sense of where each of your parishes are in the realm of special initiative fundraising or capital campaigns. If you could just type into the chat box either a number or a word or two, that you see on the screen. Where are your parishes? Where is your parish today in the process of special fundraising? Is a campaign not even on your radar? Are you anticipating or planning a campaign? Are you actively in the middle of a campaign? Or are you doing a post-mortem on a campaign that you may have implemented? Perhaps you're rethinking it, you need a bit of a pivot, or you're done and you're going through your lessons learned exercise. So we see a lot of twos.
Exactly, Nick. I love that we're seeing the twos. You're here, perfect timing.
Yeah, this is great. As you're all typing
And those in the
along-
midst, you're going to gain a lot as well.
That's right. Yeah, Melpo and I, what we're going to do today, we're going to kind of, present, a very brief overview of parish revenue and financial stability. And then we're going to go into what it means when we talk about special initiative fundraising and capital campaigns, and then give you some tools and resources that you can take back to your parishes. One thing that I want to say at the outset, I know, and I've worked with Melpo before, she's an incredible resource, and I'm telling you, she's always available. Drop her an email, give her a call, she will get back to you immediately. Same goes for me and some of the other people that you see, in this call. Steve Pappas, Steve Tibbs, tremendous resources. Bill Marianis, I know he's on the call too, for stewardship and giving and strategic planning. There are so many resources available in our archdiocese today. Feel free to reach out to me, to Melpo, to any of us, and we will gladly answer questions outside of this webinar and help you as much as we possibly can, or give you guidance so you can get the help that you need. Great. Yeah, a lot of active campaigns. Okay, Melpo, I'm going to turn it over to you
Terrific.
to talk about how our giving aligns.
Terrific. First of all, good evening, Your Eminence. Thank you so much for the warm greeting and prayer. And I love that you spoke about vision, because it is so imperative for us in any initiative to understand how we're called to give, what the why is behind it. We often talk about, but Nick and I spoke when we're thinking about capital campaigns, they don't exist in a vacuum. For those of you that have heard us talk about giving, we really are often called as Orthodox Christians throughout our life to exercise our stewardship in three different distinct ways. And we want to talk about that because capital campaigns, again, come in the context of holistic parish fiscal sustainability. They're not there just on their own to save something when everything else is crumbling. They really are creating the foundation for a fruitful campaign that propels your parish forward. So let's start with the first element, annual stewardship. Annual stewardship is the first fruits, the offering of the first fruits of our gifts of income, how we've been blessed each year and what we offer back. Truly a personal reflection of our relationship with Christ, of what we've received. And ideally within our parishes, these help address the operating budget, the annual. And in those parishes where we can truly strive, we're meeting that annual to annual. And so it truly is about what we're offering and what we're doing on an annual basis. And this is a piece I really want to make sure when we touch on stewardship, so many of us, and I'm sure so many of you on here as well, are benefiting from everybody who is doing online giving and automated giving. One of the things I just want to give a pinpoint in for stewardship is make sure every year you're inviting your parishioners and you're faithful to have that annual reflection on their stewardship commitment, that it isn't simply a rollover. It isn't simply something that continues on like a subscription, but that for those things that are automated, they're really taking and answering that call every year. That reflection is a wonderful gift that we have to really think about all that we have to be thankful for. The next piece that we're going to be talking about are those major gifts for special campaigns, capital campaigns. And they are things that, as His Eminence mentioned, come above and beyond our annual stewardship. They're time bound. So we might have a campaign for 3 to 5 years, and we're called to step up in a very particular way to offer something to our community. One of the things I'd like you to think about as we talk about campaigns throughout this evening is this concept of obligation and opportunity. For many of us, we might feel the burden initially. Oh, we've got to do this. It's feeling weighted. When we start to think about the opportunity that we have, generations before may have built our parishes, may have started different things. What is our opportunity in our generation? When we think about that, it shifts the lens and it shifts our mindset for how we can approach a campaign. And you'll find that that brings a very new and fresh energy to your effort. The third piece is what I spend a great deal of my time talking about is planned giving through dedicated endowments. This is where we're invited to make the one-time offering of the first fruits of our wealth or gain. When we think about our life, when we make our estate plan, when we think about what we will leave to our loved ones, are we reflecting our Orthodox Christian stewardship in that plan? When we do a planned gift, we offer a number of things. We reflect our faith and values. Many of you have heard me talk about, my kids were in grade school when we set our first plan, and we talked to them about how this reflects what we give every year to the church. So we're able to reflect that. We're able to actually secure some advantages financially, tax and otherwise, and we're able to have some real agency over our assets. So it's important that we think about these things, and as well, we set the intention. We set the intention for our loved ones. We set the intention for our parish. And how do these gifts serve our parish? They really provide for the long-term sustainability. They create a legacy for generations to come. That dedicated endowment becomes a fund within our parish that does two things. Provides for long-term security because we hold on to the principle of those gifts, unlike other gifts that can be spent down. That principle continues to grow and compound. But as we get to certain thresholds, the earnings can be offered back to the community through extraordinary philanthropy, ministry growth, other projects. And so it's a way to really truly complement, as His Eminence said, our other giving. And so together, these three ways of giving are not competing with one another. They do not exist in silos, but they truly are the way that holistically we represent and express our Orthodox Christian stewardship. Now, what does this mean for the parish? What does this mean for our, again, holistic fiscal planning? We can jump to the next slide, Nick. This is another visual that we've started to use with our parishes that really helps us contain our planning and educate not only our leadership, but our parishioners on how each of these revenue streams and ways of giving serve our parish. So if we think about that first piece of stewardship in the annual budget, what does that cover? That covers our building and campus maintenance, our salaries, our ministries and programs, our annual philanthropy. Are we as a parish tithing and giving? And it really helps us fulfill the parish mission on an annual basis. That should be a one-for-one, our stewardship to our budget. And keeping that exercise close can really help us assure that we are stepping up as stewards and that as a parish, we're really being faithful to that. The next piece is capital reserves. And this is where capital campaign might fit in, but on a regular basis, as our parishes, are we maintaining a capital reserve, a fund that's addressing some of those smaller projects that aren't necessarily in need of a campaign, but are we feeding and fueling those through rental revenue, festival revenue, things that maybe we can shift our reliance from for annual, but really have them start to feed a capital reserve that can do some of those projects and keep us from everything having to be a campaign. And finally, that endowment, but the capital really helps us steward the resources and the facilities that we have. Finally, that endowment helps us realize our vision. I talked about extraordinary philanthropy. The terms we use are ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary are the things that are covered in our operating budget. Like I said, taking care of our facilities and our staff and our ministries. Extraordinary are the things that go above and beyond. They help us grow and propel our ministries forward. When our parishioners can see how these channels support our parish, they can really understand how a capital gift might serve stewarding the facilities, how my annual stewardship offering is really living out every day in the impact of the parish, and what a planned gift could do for extraordinary giving and legacy that I would leave to my parish. So we want you to think holistically as that foundation for your parish. And then as we go in, a capital campaign will build upon that firm foundation. Nick, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, thanks, Melpo. That was a really great overview of the most important, what we call bookends of parish fundraising. So we have stewardship on one side, and I mean, stewardship should cover all of our annual operating expenses, but most of us have festivals and we have some other things that help us cover that annual operating budget. And then on the other side, we have planned giving. Now, again, I've been a parish council member, a metropolis council member, served in many different roles, and I know that we, as many Greek Orthodox parishes, most of us are behind in planned giving. It is the most important thing and the single thing in the history of American nonprofits that moves organizations, and that includes parishes, from annual fundraising to permanent sustainability. Now, that doesn't mean once you grow your endowment and your plan giving that stewardship stops. That just means you have a bigger capacity to use your stewardship for other activities that can help grow your parish in meaningful and impactful ways. So we have these two bookends: annual operating fundraising, hopefully plan giving, starts to see an uptick. But in the middle, we all know that there are some times that we need extra money, right? Maybe the dome is leaking. Maybe a window is cracked. Maybe your fellowship hall is outdated. Maybe you do want some new iconography. There are all these, what I call one-time or special initiatives that our parishes need money for. And it's very important to note that money should not come most of the time, right? Most should not come from our annual operating budget. And we shouldn't be touching our endowments to pay for these things. So how do we fund these special initiatives? I want to ask you all another question as we start getting into specifics of special initiative and capital campaign fundraising. What does your parish have a need for? What are you thinking about? So many of you said that you're anticipating a campaign, you're active in the middle of it, right? Special initiatives can be renovations, and that includes renovations or upgrades to existing facilities, new construction. Many people are building new buildings, iconography, adding or replacing iconography, including liturgical items. I mean, anyone who's seen a bill for church supplies knows that these things aren't cheap, but they're very, very necessary. And then there's also unforeseen needs, emergencies, things that nobody planned for. I know a parish right here nearby me had an underground gas pipeline that started leaking. The repair bill was $300,000. Where's that money come from? We need a special initiative fundraiser to make sure we cover those funds. And then finally, many of us have grown up these parishes, or if you haven't grown up in a Greek Orthodox parish, you've heard the stories about burning the mortgage or doing a special fundraiser to pay off some debt. So these are all also special initiatives. So you're already doing it, which is great. Some of you are saying 3, 4, and 5, right? So type a word, type a number in, and let us know what you're actively raising money for. And then we'll get into some of the differences between what I call special initiatives and capital campaigns.
One of the things I just want to add on there, Nick, is that I hear often the concern, especially when people come and talk to me about plan giving, we're concerned we've still got work we need to do for stewardship, or we've got a capital campaign, we can't be thinking about it. One of the things I want to just reinforce is that those who make planned gifts give more annually. Those who support a campaign often increase their stewardship following. When the campaign is done well, when there's good vision, when there's good transparency and follow-up and energy, this can actually enhance and increase your giving across the board. So it isn't about worrying that one's going to pull from the other. That's why we want you to think about these pieces holistically.
It's such a great point. When fundraising is done correctly, and we're going to get into some of those things that what we mean when we say, good fundraising or positive fundraising, it never takes away from any of those 3 big buckets, right? So campaigns don't take away from endowments, and neither of those 2 things take away from stewardship. Melpo says it perfectly. If you do these things correctly, it is an all ships rise game. All the time. All the time. I mean, in my experience, if it's done correctly, it's not 80% of the time, it's not 85, it is 100% of the time, all giving to a parish increases. So let's break down the difference between special initiatives and capital campaigns. This is one of those things where every capital campaign is a special initiative, but not all special initiatives are capital campaigns, right? Not all special initiatives require a capital campaign. So what's the difference? A special initiative is something that addresses an ad hoc or primarily a need-driven project. Special initiatives can be short-term, real finite in duration, and they can require a small number of donors. So maybe, again, it's a repair to a gas line, it's fixing a leaking roof. Everyone should be aware of it and informed and have the opportunity to participate, but it may not be that big of a lift. When you need and when you should launch a capital campaign, these are for things that are part of a broader strategic vision. So many of you said that you want to do renovations or build new facilities. That really needs to be part of your broader strategic plan. So when you look at your parish holistically and you have a vision and you have a plan and you know that you need a new building or really intensive renovations, to fulfill that vision, then we want to start talking about a major fundraising initiative, a capital campaign that may take years, and it really will take everyone in the parish participating, and perhaps even some outside funding and outside advice. So the things that I always like to advise people on is that we should never undertake a capital campaign. Again, a capital campaign being a long, multi-year fundraising initiative that goes on for a while. We should never do a capital campaign to pay down debt or for an unforeseen event or an emergency. These are small, special initiatives that if you have a healthy parish, you should typically be able to go out and raise the money for in a relatively short period of time from a relatively small number of people, right? We don't want to keep dragging a parish through constant or revolving special initiative fundraising. We really want to make sure that we apply special attention to things that garner the importance of a capital campaign. What are the aspects for a capital campaign? Again, first and foremost, it has to build upon a parish's existing vision or an existing strategic plan. The vision and the strategy need to be in place first, and then we can build a compelling campaign around an aspect of that strategy. Second, Melpo has said it, we're all saying it, His Eminence said it beautifully. Capital campaign fundraising is separate from annual giving and stewardship. We need to present it that way. Parishioners and donors need to receive it that way. This is different, something above and beyond, and it is a one-time thing. Now, also very important is that messaging. Clergy and parish council must, all caps, MUST, must buy into this vision. We all, right, I mean, so many, we're all in Greek parishes here. We all know the cliches about Greeks, right? You put 10 Greeks in a room, you have 12 different opinions. So in these sorts of cases, we all need to be aligned. We all need to be singing from the same sheet of music or reading from the same page in the playbook. Everyone needs to be supportive and on board and moving in the same direction. Number 4, you have to do some sort of research and preparation. You need to be ready to implement a campaign. I hear this all the time from people that I work with. They say, well, my father or my grandfather built this parish, and all they did was send a letter and the money just showed up. Or we went and we knocked door to door to door on every parishioner's house and the money just came in. Fundraising, and I can tell you as a professional fundraiser, fundraising is similar to any other industry or business or profession or project methodology, right? In the same way that we don't write ink on paper letters to our friends and relatives anymore, right? Email kind of did away with that. We don't knock on people's doors or send a simple letter in the mail and expect large amounts of money to come into our parishes. Fundraising is categorically different today than it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago. And again, I can tell you as someone who does this regularly, fundraising is different today than it was 3 years ago. It is a constant evolution. And in order to raise large sums of money for visionary plans that tie into your parish's strategy, we need to be using modern fundraising techniques that meet our parishioners where they are. It's simple stuff. It's not complex math. It's not rocket science, but we need to be listening and responding to the needs of our parishioners and the ways that they want to be engaged. Readiness planning and analysis, talking with people, listening to people helps us achieve that. Number 5, we need a compelling case for support. Again, these days, it's not enough to say the dome is leaking, we need to fix it, or we need a new parish because we're growing so rapidly. A compelling case for support is an inspiring narrative that speaks to something bigger than the project itself. We are not building this building just so we can have more square footage. You're probably building that building because you want to bring more souls to Jesus Christ. You want to bring more people into the koinonia of your parish and into your spiritual family. That sort of visionary and Christ-centered message is what attracts people to give. A compelling case for support is never, ever, ever, never about bricks and mortar. If you go out into a capital campaign selling each window for X and a brick and a walkway for Y and the repair to the dome, the roof for Z, you're going to get what you ask for, and it is never going to be enough. Large donations and capital campaign fundraising is unlocked by a message that speaks to the purpose, the vision, the reason, the why that your parish exists. And it can be some work to figure out what that message is and how to present it. Once you present that compelling case for support, the next phase starts in, and that's called the quiet phase. And that is where we want to put an early focus on lead donors to raise 50 to 75% of our goal. We want to get as much money in hand from as few people as possible. So then when we go out to the parish, the entire parish, we aren't starting from zero. If it's a $10 million project, we want to have quiet conversations. Remember, I'm saying quiet, not secret. That none of this is secret, but it's quiet in that we are dealing with and meeting with people who we know have the capacity and the interest to give a lead gift that will get us out of the gate so that when we do stand in front of the parish, we will already be at least halfway there. It's much easier for people to swallow a $10 million fundraising campaign when you already have 5 to 6 in hand. Also, you want some expert leadership. Hopefully someone in your parish has some professional experience in fundraising, or they've been a volunteer for some capital campaigns. But again, capital campaign and special initiative fundraising, as Melpa said, and Melpa, I want to bring you back in and invite any comments that you have. It's very, very important because things aren't the way that they used to be. And the more professional advice and the more experienced leadership that we have within our own community, the better we will be and the more success we will have.
It's great, Nick. I want to actually pick up one of the questions in the chat that is there a downside to having too many capital campaigns? That everybody sort of holds back stewardship because, there's going to be another campaign. You raise a really valid question. And I think what it speaks to is parishioners who might feel as though the parish is being reactive versus intentionally planning. So I would say this is a place where your parish may need to step back and say, do we have a strategic plan? Do we have a building plan so we know how to steward and care for our facility? Can we map out what these initiatives would be so that we're not just jumping from one small campaign to the next? Because that could be, while sometimes that might be necessary, I think what you're speaking to might just be an opportunity to step back and again, look at holistic planning so that then better to have one larger campaign that everybody knows is they're getting toward versus I'm only going to write the check so far because the next thing I know I've got to write something else. So great. Just want to make sure we hit on that, Nick. I think the rest of it you hit spot on.
Absolutely. One thing that I always tell parishes and groups is one campaign, one target. Now, that sounds like a cliche, real nice and easy, but if you get your vision and your strategy right, and you really know what you want to do for the next few years, you can't go out to your parishioners and say, we have one vision and it's going to cost X and we're doing this now. So you don't, Greg, as you asked, so you don't have an annual capital campaign that conflicts with annual stewardship and your annual Philotokos drive and your annual Kuvuklio and flower drive and asking people to, on and on and on and on and on it goes. I've told some of the people on this call here. I was at church the other Sunday and I was looking through, and I won't name the church. It wasn't mine. I was looking through their bulletin, and in the bulletin there were 11 asks for money. Right. So there were 11 times that people were saying, oh, give to this, give to that, give to this, give to that. It's exhausting. So strategy and vision is very important. And then from that strategy and vision, we break it down into a concrete plan for special initiatives or a capital campaign. Got some questions coming in here.
Yeah.
So we got the first one, Nick. Melpo answered Greg's question. So Father Peter Kostakis.
Right. So the question is, how can we, whoops, sorry, I'm scrolling with my finger to read the questions and I'm moving slides as well. So the question is, how can we draw from the enthusiasm for beyond and complementary, which sometimes seems to lead to burnout among leaders? And we want to inspire more sustainable growth and regular stewardship, educating the faithful in what Melpo said, and that all the types of giving are not independent of one another. Melpo said it perfectly. It starts with vision and strategy. If you're asking these sorts of questions, which are very good questions and very healthy questions, it's probably time to take a step back and really say, what are we doing as a parish? Why are we here? What are we doing? What is our purpose? Many parishes, obviously, every parish exists to bring more souls to Christ, right? And build koinonia and collectively win our salvation. But some parishes have a greater emphasis on campus ministry, right? Or youth ministry. I know one parish where they don't have many young people, so they've really shifted to senior citizen care and ministry. What's the vision? What's the strategy? From there, we can distill how to best talk about our stewardship, how to encourage people to give planned gifts, and then look at the gaps where we may need a special initiative or capital campaign.
I just want to dovetail on that because I think there is something to be said. If you want to go back to that holistic model, when we can start to feed that, there are parishes that I've worked with that are in a position where their stewardship is close to 100% of their operating. They have built a capital reserve and they have an endowment for ministry growth, and they have not had capital campaigns for over 25 years because things like HVAC systems, roofs, can all get covered out of the capital reserve. But it takes a very disciplined approach and time to shift your parish from reliance on other revenue streams and building that stewardship. But it starts with having the conversation so your leadership and your parishioners understand how all of these pieces work together. But there is an ideal where that can come to a place where the need for a campaign is few and far between because you've really been stewarding those three elements well. So again, that's an ideal, but it does, I will say I've worked with a number of parishes and I can tell you the model can work.
That's right. Melpo, one of the things that I ended this slide with is expert leadership and outside counsel. This is a huge question so many people bring to me. Do we need help? Why do we need help? When is the right time to seek outside help? I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. And I'm going to put on my hat from my past experience. So before I came to the Archdiocese, I served as a consultant for a philanthropic firm out of the East Coast, out of New Jersey, that worked with the Catholic Church, and then ended up coming into the Orthodox. So I served as a philanthropic counsel in religious fundraising. And I really want to talk about how this can work very effectively for parishes. But I want to make the distinction here. We're talking about counsel versus, a consultant, somebody to help coach you through, teach your team, guide you through, not a fundraiser who will come in and do it for you, come in and ask your, this isn't where you just hand it to somebody else. And please know that it's not ethical for somebody to take a percentage of what they raise as their fee. So you want to be very thoughtful, and we're blessed within the Orthodox community, Nick, Steve, a number of people even on this call do this work for our parishes, provide that consult. There are also external firms like the one I used to work for, like others in the country that do this work. And so I just want to talk to you about some of the things to think about as to why and when to consider counsel, and how to go about making those considerations. First is size and scope. And I think, Nick, this was your word, that if it's over 2 million, you really want to have some outside counsel. You really want to have some additional, because you need to think about the capacity of your leadership in your parish. Raising $3 to $5 to $10 million can be a daunting effort. But if you've got somebody who's done it, who has the tools and can teach and guide your team, it becomes much more doable. And the goal is to leave your parish better than it was when it walked in, that you're building relationships, you're building leadership capacity, and you're getting those skills internally so that you'll be able to do further things in your parish beyond the campaign. The other piece that's really critical here is candor and capacity. One of the things in the planning stage that Nick talks about is really understanding how much you can raise and what the appetite is for the vision and the case that you have. One of the things that the outside counsel can do is do a study, a feasibility study, a campaign planning study, where they go meet with select members of your parish, not just your major donors, but others within the community. And they test the case for support to see what kind of response you're going to get. And they get a sense for capacity, how much people are willing and capable of giving for this cause. It's one thing to say, well, we need a church and it's $10 million, so we're going to raise $10 million because that's what we need. But yet our annual stewardship is $200,000. The numbers, it's hard to make that connection without having that deeper dive. So when you have outside counsel doing it, your donors, the participants, are able to be very candid about it, and you get a realistic picture of what you can raise, what's compelling in the case, and some real directives about your campaign plan. So that is one of, if you do nothing else with counsel, having them come in and do the study and setting a plan for you, really key. That will be worth the investment. The drive and direction is once you get into it. We all know how busy we can get with parish council members. I often say, for people I'm recruiting for endowment leadership, I don't want them on the parish council because I don't want them diverted by the day-to-day. I want them to be able to drive that and focus. Same with campaigns. But if you have counsel that can really help focus your leadership so that when they meet, they know exactly what they're doing, your meetings are efficient and effective, and your volunteers within the parish get trained. Nobody is a natural. People feel uncomfortable asking. But when we start to talk about inviting people to help us realize a vision, when we start to coach people on that, it becomes really energizing for our parishioners. And that's what counsel can help you with. And then finally, impact and sustainability. When you're doing this from the pre-campaign study, when we're out talking with folks, we're building relationships, because people are saying, look, they're coming to ask my advice. There's an old adage in fundraising: if you ask for money, you'll get advice. You ask for advice, you'll get money. The study is that first, it's that conversation that says, hey, we want your input on this. You don't need to talk to everybody. If I know you've talked to Steve and Nick, okay, you've heard from somebody who I trust. And it will have enduring impact. The theme for the firm that I used to work with is, it's not about giving a man a fish and feed him for a day. We don't just come in and raise the money and leave it and go. We teach him to fish and feed him for life. We want to leave that parish better than it was. And that's really what you want to think about with counsel that you seek. Nick, you're in the field with this right now all the time. So Add to it.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And so many of the comments that I'm seeing in the chat and many of the comments that I hear from parishes and organizations all the time is my people are tired, right? Donor fatigue is a term that we've all heard.
Yes.
My people are just tired. They're tired of giving. When you run a properly managed campaign, it invigorates a community. So, you know, I don't want to make a sweeping generalization, but if you are doing these campaigns right, and if they're managed correctly, and it may be hiring a professional, your community gets invigorated. I really have never seen a campaign where at the end of the campaign, people are like, I never want to do that again. Quite the opposite. And I mean this from experience. I finish a campaign and people say, is there a nearby church that we can go help? Can we do more? What's next? Nick, can you get me a job? I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many priests I've had ask me for, like, wow. I mean, it's really invigorating when you can do this in the right way with the right spirit, the right focus.
Absolutely, Nick. Absolutely. And you're hearing Nick's energy. I know there was somebody in the chat who was asking, how do we find counsel? Nick's right on here. He's one of the best. Steve Tibbs as well with OPL. Feel free to reach out to me directly and I can put you in touch with some of the other firms and resources that we're familiar with. But it's looking for Church Philanthropy Council or Church Philanthropic Council, but happy to help guide you in that. And again, please, Nick and Steve are here as well.
Right. Steve and Melpo, let's kind of scroll through.
Yeah, we've got a few. Let's go back to, I'm going to take you back, Nick, to the quiet phase. So one of the first questions, earlier questions, was in the quiet phase. Let's see, I'm going to go back a bit. In phase 6, so that's quiet phase. Is it enough to get pledges or must it be cash? I guess cash in hand.
Great question. Pledges are fine. Absolutely. So pledges count. They absolutely count. And Steve, if you don't mind, I'm going to tie this into another question that I saw in the chat.
Yep.
The deacon from Reno asked, do feasibility studies gauge the amount of debt that a parish can take on? They should, but they don't always necessarily have to do it. So pledges count, you know, in terms of trying to raise 50% during the quiet phase. But because so much of large dollar fundraising is in the form of pledges, this is where financing has to come into play. If you're renovating a facility or if you're building a new church, I can promise you your construction spending is going to go like this, while your pledge revenue is going to go like this. And there is going to be a gap, right? You're always going to spend more in construction than you're going to receive in pledges. So financing is often necessary to fill that gap. Now, this is something that I ask, you know, churches and organizations all the time. What's your appetite for financing? It is going to be necessary at some point. Very few campaigns are so exceptional. And actually, I'll proudly say the Metropolis of Pittsburgh, we were one, a $15 million campaign, and we never accessed a dollar of financing. That's an extraordinary effort. It can be done. Most people need a little bit of financing. So a feasibility study or a good counsel or professional would advise you on what an appropriate level of financing is. Most parishes that I work with or that I've come across with, they have a finance expert. They have someone, you know, in the business, and they're way better at it than most people out there. So typically a lot of help in the parish pews.
And Nick, I would add, you know, a good sound treasurer, or as Nick said, someone with the financial acumen within the parish. You need to look more than just next year's budget. You do have to take a long range. If you're going to take on longer term debt beyond that gap period, you really do need to look out what can the parish afford from coming out of the operating budget to service the debt. That'll be important. So whether the audit committee or the treasurer or others can really take a 5 or 10-year view to what the parish can take on, because you definitely don't want to get the parish into a difficult situation down the road.
You know, Steve, Irene threw in another interesting challenge in the chat about what happens when things start to go beyond costs rise, things change. There's some design changes. Some segments aren't stepping up. I think a couple of things, Irene, is that this is where the value of the study comes in. If you've got it engaged and the pre-planning. I know, Nick, you talk about having that plan set early on, so we know exactly what we're talking about and the plan is there. But even with all of that pre-planning, Irene, there are going to be, forgive me, there are going to be instances where changes will happen. And there it's about transparent communication and making sure that we are being clear about what's happening, what's changing, what's behind it, helping parishioners understand if they can feel a part of it. As Nick talked about, there's that energy. They can make that discernment. Think about it as your family. If we know we're going into a renovation and things start to explode, we have to start to think together, what are we willing to make the additional investment for? And so that transparent communication and then as much pre-planning that you can do might head that off. Nick, what would you advise?
Yeah, absolutely. Planning, and that actually ties very well into the next slide. You know, what are the stages of a typical capital campaign? I love a quote. It's attributed to Abraham Lincoln, but history tells us that good old Abe didn't say it. But we'll go with colloquialism, right? So the quote is, if I had 10 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend 8 hours sharpening my axe.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot stress how important planning and preparation is, because it cuts off so many of the problems that you're asking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I own what you're talking about. Budget revisions and unforeseen surprises can happen, but if you really spend the time in planning and preparation, we avoid those issues before they even start.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, and I can only speak for myself, I have never worked on a campaign that had a significant target increase. Do your work, sharpen your axe before you start swinging. You know, you can really, you shouldn't have those problems. Someone else asked in the chat, and then I'll go back to this slide, quickly, and then we'll open up to some more Q&A. But costs, someone asked the costs about counsel. It is a wide spectrum. Again, talk to Melpo, talk to me. We can point you in the direction of people that might be a good fit for your parish and your context. It doesn't need to be wildly expensive. Outside counsel is not going to be free, but a good counsel, a good advisor, a good consultant that is an appropriate fit for your parish is going to pay for themselves many, many times over. Happens all the time. Now, what does a typical capital campaign look like? These are minimums, that you see here. But again, I cannot stress it enough. Fundraising is a discipline of time. It just takes time and patience, and the more planning and preparation, the better. Everybody says, oh, we need iconography, or we want a new church building. Let's write a letter, let's get some money, right? And then by the time a church comes to me, 2-3 years down, they say, hey, we've been at this fundraising thing for 3 years, and we only raised $200,000. Our goal is 5 million. What do we do now? Well, we got to reset probably. So more time in planning and preparation. It's typically around 3 to 6 months. That's where we really button down our construction planning, our architectural drawings. Again, any good, committee leader, whether they're a parishioner of yours or an outside consultant, is really going to work with you in a one-on-one basis and have a planning retreat and do some work. You're going to need some PR promotional materials, a brochure, a presentation, perhaps a video. These things are all very, very common. Honestly, if you want to do yourselves a favor, we all have AI these days, right? You can put a question into AI, how should I successfully run a capital campaign for $5 million? And you're going to get a pretty good plan, right? It's going to be okay. The other thing that you can do is think of all the universities or the famous museums that you know. Google the name of your preferred university, followed by capital campaign. I guarantee you it's going to lead to a website with a really sharp video and a really good looking brochure and a compelling case statement, all these things that we've been talking about tonight. You're going to see it at Georgetown, Harvard, the Carnegie Museums, the Gettys, all these things. Why? Because it really, really works when it's done the right way. So feel free to do your own research. Call someone, call us, to help with some of these things. But planning and preparation really is very important. Once you get some of those promotional materials in hand and you have answers to questions that your parishioners are going to ask, then it's time to go out and start meeting with potential lead donors. That's the quiet phase. Typically takes around 6 months, all dependent on how much you intend to raise. But you're going to, as a committee, as a capital campaign committee, you're going to review some names of people that you might know or people that are in your network. You're going to think about gift amounts. You're going to start communicating with them. And then very importantly, we have some of these slides that I know Steve will share with everyone as appendices that has a much more detailed breakdown information of things that you should have before you launch a capital campaign. Things like a communication system. Whoop, sorry, folks, I did it again. How good is your, now you get to see my favorite ski mountain. So, all right, true confession, I'm a skiaholic. So let me see if I can get the slides back up. Give me.
And while you're doing that, I think Sandy asked about how important is it to have the construction plan and cost before going into the campaign. Really essential, people. It's while we talk about vision, if you are doing something, it's important to understand what that plan is, what that looks like. But what Nick talked about before, that it isn't just the bricks and mortar, you have to talk about how your parish will live and fulfill its mission within that space. It isn't just how beautiful it is, but as he said, how are we bringing souls to Christ? So that is a part of it. And Peter made an important point about having, a contingency buffer in your budget as well for some of those changes and adjustments and costs that'll happen as you go. So great points and great questions.
Thanks, Melpo. Once we raise that initial 50 to 75%, and again, that's a sliding scale depending on the parish or the organization. Things change all the time. I tell people all the time, I went to the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. Notre Dame's rule of thumb today is they don't go public with a capital campaign until they have 100% of all the money raised. Now think about the power of that. Why would they even go public once they have 100%? Because if they say, oh, we need a new school of architecture and the goal is 100 million. If they raise that 100 million up front, imagine the FOMO, right? Or the enthusiasm that it builds for other donors when you say, we have this vision to be the leading school of architecture in the United States, and it's going to cost 100 million. And by the way, we're very pleased to tell you that we've already raised that 100 million. Now people come out of the woodwork and they say, how can I get on board? What can I do? How can I participate? How can we make this even bigger? And that 100 million turns into 200 or 250 very, very quickly because of the enthusiasm that people feel when they see others giving. So 50 to 75% is a sliding scale, but then there is a point where we do want to get the campaign out in front of everybody and invite donations of all levels, right? Mm-hmm. It can be $1 million, it can be 100, it can be $10. And a properly run capital campaign is going to acknowledge and steward those donors with appropriate recognition and gratitude, right? Whether it's the widow's mite or a significant donation, everyone needs to be invited to the campaign, and everyone who contributes to a parish campaign or special initiative needs to feel the gratitude that anyone on the giving spectrum feels. So to do that, there are typically, some ways to acknowledge, to dedicate things. We've all seen, giving murals or giving rosters. That's one option. There are other ways to appropriately and faithfully acknowledge people, but it's up to the parish and the priest and the council to figure out how to best acknowledge and steward those donors. And then finally, at some point, I typically like to do it around the 1 year mark in a campaign. We need to pause. Again, doesn't mean stop. We need to take a breath and just catch up with ourselves, right? See how we're doing. And do we need to make any pivots? And a pivot can mean, wow, this is, again, using the Notre Dame example, this is going so well. The pivot is, let's do more. Or maybe we do need to take a slight adjustment, but we always need to be checking in with ourselves and our committee to make sure that we're running the campaign appropriately. Melpo, any thoughts or anything that I may have missed?
No, I think that it's one of the things when you talk about hitting the campaign, the quiet phase, your transformative, your pivotal, your core donors, they want to be able to do the significant work and the heavy lift that they can, but they also want to know that everybody else has the opportunity to be a part of it as well. And so really being able to do that together is one of the beauties of this. And when, to Nick's point, you come in successfully at that 70% or then everybody feels like, boy, they're joining that. They're able to be a part of pushing it over the top. And there's really something exciting and energizing about that. So that piece is really critical.
Great. Nick and Melpo, we've got about 7-8 minutes still left in the formal portion of our webinar tonight, at which time we'll stop the recording. His Eminence will give us his blessing. I know that was your last slide. We do have some questions queued up, actually. Want to also let everyone know, being respectful of everyone's time, we try to keep these at 75 minutes, but we also like providing a little bit of bonus time, unrecorded bonus time afterwards for about 15 minutes. So if you have additional questions for Nick and Melpo, feel free to hang on after the closing prayer, and we can continue the dialogue for another 15 minutes. So it's probably time for 1 or 2 more questions. I know Sandy had one on how important is it to have a firm construction plan and costs before going into the fundraising campaign. Let's broaden that, not just construction, but how firm should the kind of budget be to be able to say what the capital campaign target it needs to be?
You're not going to like the answer. Very, very. The more the better. The more detailed, the better. And again, I know that can be difficult. Our parishes are run by volunteers, right? Clergy aside, councils and most committees, most parishes are, have very, very few staff. So again, I was treasurer for my parish. I know what it takes. The better detail that you have in a budget, the more precise, the more successful you will be. Bottom line, sorry to say.
Less detail, a lot more contingency. But you do not want to undershoot your capital campaign budget, especially when you go to the public phase.
Well, and I'm even going to go further, Steve, and say, you may want to say, well, we'll keep it here and they'll just give and then they'll want to give more. You may have a goal that's higher than you think, but a donor sees that you've been thoughtful, you've put a well prepared plan together, you've got all of the contingencies set, and they may increase their gift because they trust what's there, they trust the plan, they see what's coming to fruition. So don't minimize what the potential impact of that could be. So think about how your parishioners are going to respond and what's going to be important for them to be able to make that commitment.
Absolutely. Hey, Nick, if you just go to the previous slide, Father Paul also had a question about, as you think about who to involve, you talked about, depending on the size of the campaign, the numbers of people involved in each of these steps will be different. But how does the team kind of flex up and down, and expand as you move along the phases? And then after that, feel free to take down the presentation. We could all see one another.
Great question. A small team should start. Now that includes priest, a representative from parish council. Again, I know council's mostly volunteers, but there should definitely be some a liaison between parish council and a fundraising committee. But I like to start with a small group that could be 5, it could be 8. I don't like to go more than 8 because we really need to plan and do all, hammer out all these details that we've been talking about, budget, this, that, whatever. Now, anytime we need to pull people in, a subject matter expert for construction or whatnot, we can do it. But the core fundraising team to start should be 5 to 8 people, hopefully including father and a representative from the parish council. We get our heads around things, and then we start to go out and test or interview or talk to parishioners. I like to interview 20 to 30 people, right? Again, depending on the size of the parish and the size of the campaign, hear from them, listen to them, get their input. The other thing that I like to do that's very important is I want to know the challenges or any opposition to the campaign right up front, because then I go back to the committee and we prepare an FAQ sheet or at least internal talking points. We know a contingent of our parish is going to ask about this, or they're going to bring up opposition in that way. We want to address it before the questions even get asked. Once you have that 5 to 8 and insight from a smaller group of parishioners, then we can expand it to ambassadors or other people who may know people throughout the community. And we can break down our goal into giving ranges or different giving amounts. And we can work with a larger group of people. Again, I typically don't like to go to more than 15. But those 15 people should be people who are connected throughout the parish, the community, and any sort of broader demographic that the parish may address.
And I would remember with those that they step up and make their commitment first, because it is much easier. It's important that they reach out to others and invite them peer to peer. I made this commitment. This was why it was important to me, to our family. I invite you to join us. Those are things that are really key, and people want to be a part of that team. If I'm not doing it, why are you asking me? So really important to make sure that that initial team is fully committed and inviting others to join them.
Fantastic. Yeah, very, very important. That dedicated group to begin. I know we're just about at the time, a couple minutes, but that'll give us time for His Eminence to give us his blessing once again, as the formal part of the webinar comes to a close, and any closing thoughts he may have, and then we'll stop the recording. And anyone, again, welcome to stay on. You don't need to, again, being respectful of everyone's time, but if you'd like to stay on and a little more Q&A.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Nico and Melpomene. I think many of the wise advice regarding fundraising are well taken from all of us. Above all, my suggestion would be begin from the beginning by prayer. Make sure that you pray hard when you start or beginning to start thinking about fundraising. Pray hard and ask God to give you the strength that you need to bring to you that kind of clarity of vision and determination to bring the people and your work that you're doing into fruition. Let us pray. Gracious and loving Lord, we thank you for this time of learning and fellowship and for the knowledge that has been shared with us this evening. We are grateful for Nick and Melpomene for their preparation and guidance, and for all those who have participated in this gathering. Grant our clergy and lay leaders wisdom as they return to their parishes and consider their needs and opportunities before them. Help us to be faithful stewards of all you have entrusted to us, making decisions with integrity, generosity, and a vision for the generations that will follow. Strengthen our parishes so that they may continue to be places of worship, fellowship, service, witness, and prayer, always proclaiming the saving message of your gospel. Guide us in the work before us, protect us as we conclude this evening, and keep us always united in faith and in love. For you are our sanctification, and to you are our glory, to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and always, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. A blessed evening to everyone. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Your Eminence,
Your Eminence.
very much.